Hi, I'm Sam from Tarot for Writing. Welcome and welcome back to our exploration of every single card in the tarot deck. This is inspired by Esther from Mindful Tarot, and I have some information about this challenge in the description below that you might want to check out. Today is going to be all about the Ten of Wands. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. We're going to go over a quick definition of the card, zero in on a detail, and then I'll share some thoughts on how I use a card like the Ten of Wands to inspire my creative writing. I'm a paranormal fiction author, and I use tarot every day to inspire new characters, new stories, and to layer a lot of fun, interesting details into my chapters. So let's dive right in with the definition. This is the card of overwhelm, of burden, and of carrying too much, as we can see in the depiction here with this guy carrying this whole big bundle of wands. It's also about not being able to see where you're going. As you can tell, the way he's carrying these wands, it's obstructing his view. It's about overextending yourself and about taking on too much. It can also be about doing too much at once. So maybe in general you could handle all this stuff, but maybe it's not the best idea, if you're pulling this card, to do everything all at once. It might be time to put down that bundle, take a look at everything, and prioritize what you want to do today, this week, this month, right now in this moment, and what do you maybe need to take aside and save for another day, another trip down the path. And speaking of the path, the detail that I focused on this morning is the little yellow house with the red roof that we can see in the background there. And to me, it looks like the figure in the card is heading toward that house. This is where he's going. But it's hard for him to see because of all the wands that he's carrying. And that kind of got me thinking about how when we're in this feeling of overwhelm, of being stressed out, of having taken on too much, it's very hard to see where we're going. It's hard to visualize our goals. It's hard to remember why we're doing this thing that we're doing. For me, it is always about a book. Sometimes when I am deep in a story, when I'm fighting a deadline, when I'm dealing with all the admin-y stuff that comes with having an author career and being an independently published author, when I get overwhelmed by all the different tasks, or I try to write too many stories at once, sometimes the ideas come flying in from all sides and I'm trying to work on 2, 3, 4 stories at the same time. When I get overwhelmed like that, it's hard to remember why I'm doing this, that I'm doing this for the love of telling the stories, that I'm doing this because I want to bring joy and relaxation to my readers, to have that moment where you can lose yourself in a story and forget about your own burdens, your own stresses, whatever is going on in your own life. And it's hard to stay motivated and do the hard work of writing and publishing a book when I don't have that goal, that vision clear in my mind. And when you're in that position, in that energy that the Ten of Wands represents, it's hard to do that. And it's also, not only can you not see where you're going, so it's hard to make the right decisions of this is where I should put my energy today. It also makes it easy to give up right before you reach your goal. So let's look at this again. We can see the house, and while it's in the distance, it's not really that far away. If we were walking toward that house, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to finish the walk and get there. But if you can't see where you're going and you're carrying this heavy burden that feels like it's about to break your back, it would be easy to give up at this point, even though you're that close to reaching your goal. So that's something important to keep in mind, especially if you find yourself overextended on the verge of burnout and you're considering just throwing in the towel and giving up. Maybe it's time to put down the burden, to put down those wants, and get a clear view of where you're at. That will require taking a little bit of a rest, walking away from everything you're doing to clear your mind and gain some perspective. But you'll be able to do much better decisions as a result of that. So that's kind of what I got out of the card as a tarot reader. Now let's talk a little bit about how I would use this card in my fiction writing. So of course the first thing that came to mind is to develop a character who has a lot on his shoulders, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work. He or she is doing all the things. So maybe this is somebody who is overworked, overwhelmed, and on the brink of burnout. The very first thing that popped into my mind is a single parent with several kids who is new to this solo parenting journey. You know, maybe they lost their spouse, maybe their spouse walked out on them, maybe during the divorce he or she got main custody of the children. For whatever reason, this person is overwhelmed by all the things it takes to parent children well, and they're in desperate need of a nanny. That would be a fun beginning to a potential romance story. Or how about a CEO who is overextended and needs a great assistant? Or a store owner or a business owner who is in desperate need of a mentor or somebody to step up who can provide some advice because they can't see their path. They're overworked, overburdened, but they don't know how to step back from that, how to let some of those tasks go, how to find more work-life balance. All of those could make for some very interesting characters and some great starts of romance novels. And then in the scene, just having one of the characters feeling overwhelmed and overreacting as a result of that stress and overwhelm could be interesting. You know, it could just be a momentary overwhelm, you know, just too much going on in that one day. I know we've all had days like that, and it's easy to overreact. And then, of course, that can create some conflict and some tension that puts a damper on the romance, which is what we need at certain parts in the story. Or it could be somebody who is struggling to accept help. Maybe they're taking on everybody else's burden, or they aren't good at asking for somebody to help and do some of these tasks for them. That could certainly create some conflict. And then going a little bit more literal, we could have somebody doing some manual labor, and maybe they are impressing their significant other with what they're doing, or doing a physical feat, you know, lifting a big beam, or I don't know, just doing something to impress the girl. Or how about a grand gesture? You know, it's a very common storyline and trope in a romance where toward the end he or she does something to show and prove to the other person in the story without any doubt that they are in love and fully able and ready to give this relationship a go. You know, this could be he wiping out all her student loan debt because he's secretly a billionaire. It could be her going in and revamping his company and making his job so much easier so they can actually go on a vacation together. You know, all sorts of fun ideas for grand gestures. If you read romance novels, you can probably think of at least 10 or 15 of your favorite grand gestures just off the top of your head. So depending on how the story goes, this might be a great time for either, the big final grand gesture, or maybe just a smaller version of doing something nice for the other person to show how much this character loves and cares. Could definitely add a lot of interest to a story. And then, of course, if we're going back to the physical labor, if the pacing is a little slow, the story gets a little bit boring, it's never a bad idea to have the guy take off his shirt and chop some wood, or have the woman do the equivalent of whatever works for that particular story or novel I'm working on. And then last but not least, I thought this would be a good inspiration for adding something to the story where maybe one character is trying too hard. They're trying too hard to make things work, to prove themselves to their love interest. Maybe they're too lavish with gifts, they're calling too much, they're showing up too much. In one way or the other, depending on what else is going on in the story, they're just trying too hard, and as a result, they're doing more harm than good. And that could actually, be something that pulls the two characters apart. In romance, we're always trying to balance bringing the characters together and then pulling them apart to keep the story interesting and to make them work for it, essentially. So that would be a great way to introduce a little bit more of the tension that I mentioned so much in these segments where I talk about how I use the cards to inspire my writing. Because let's face it, quite a few tarot cards are very good at making things go wrong, at giving us inspiration for creating more tension. And that is one of the reasons why I love them so much as a writing tool. So these are my thoughts on the 10 of Wands. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I'd love to have you, and I'd love to share more of these short videos about how I use tarot, or how I use individual tarot cards in my journey as a fiction writer. There's also a playlist that you're welcome to check out, and I will continue to go through the cards. Next up, we take a look at the court cards in the suit of wands, starting with the pages. I'll see you then.